This is the Singularity Syndicate podcast. I'm Najah Faisal. I'm joined today by Denzil Eden, MIT and Harvard graduate and founder and CEO of Smarty, an AI-powered productivity app. And we'll discuss the future of work and her journey as a solo female technical founder who managed to raise over $2.5 million in funding. And now, here's Denzil Eden. I'm truly excited about this episode because not only your story is so inspiring and very much worthy of sharing with the world, but also because we're discussing a very dear topic to me, and this is the productivity and the future of work. So I want to start from the very beginning. Where did you grow up? How did you get into MIT and Harvard? And how did Smarty came about?
I grew up in California in San Jose, right in the heart of the Bay Area. I started coding very early. I was 8 years old. I was exposed to Logo while I was at school. And I just fell in love with how logical it was, how exciting it was to be able to build something with just a few lines of code. So I've been coding for most of my life. And I took that passion with me to MIT specifically because I wanted to study it more deeply. I did a bachelor's and master's there. My master's had a theoretical focus in AI, but I actually did a thesis project in human computer interactions. And I built pretty much a precursor to Slack, but for the classroom. I honestly wish I had stuck with it, but instead I decided to go to big tech and I started as a PM at PowerPoint, which was a lot of fun, but I really missed coding and building. And so I started teaching computer science at a community college, and then I started teaching at San Francisco State. And I eventually ended up transitioning from product to software engineer at Yammer, which was a Microsoft startup. So it was under the big tech company umbrella, but it had very much a startup feel. And that was really when I first started to get excited about smaller companies and building things, but I still wasn't sure if being a software engineer was for me. And so I decided to go and get my MBA at Harvard Business School. And that was really the time where I tried out a lot of different careers. I've tried out a lot of different things. And it's also where the idea for Smarty really hit me. And I really was interested in figuring out how to automate all of the stress and anxiety and the administrative work that I was doing while I was at school away, because I knew that technology was capable of automating all of that work, but that tool didn't exist. So I started building it for myself. I started as a chatbot and I grew it to what it is today.
That's very impressive. I mean, I looked at your website extensively last night, and I'm personally so bullish on productivity. I believe that time is the most valuable asset we have. So, how does Smarty differ from all the other productivity apps?
That's a great question. And I too am obsessed with productivity, future of work, tracking my time. I really do believe in that idea that time is a fixed commodity. We only have 24 hours in a day. So we really every day are making choices and placing bets with our time around what we want over the long term. And so that really is kind of a driving force for me behind Smarty. And I think the three main features of Smarty today is really the first one, which is around this idea of AI automatically builds your schedule. Smarty is trying to help you plan your best day every day. You put into Smarty all of the tasks you have to do, all of the priorities, all of the deadlines, all of the events, and Smarty figures out when is the best time to do what based off your habits, based off your recurring tasks, based on new things coming up and you having to reschedule conflicts. You have AI and technology and software handling all of that through Smarty. So that's our first big value proposition. Our second big value proposition is this idea of just ask Smarty. If you're trying to create an event, instead of manually switching to your calendar event, dragging and dropping and creating an event, you can just say into Smarty, coffee with Stella at 2 p.m. Friday, Central Time at Blue Bottle in San Francisco, and Smarty will recognize the location, the contact, the time zone difference, and immediately send a calendar event to me and Stella. That's just in calendar management, but we're also in task management, contact management, scheduling link management, and we're about to add email management as well. So really, this idea, you should just be able to ask for what you need, and Smarty can parse the different parameters and make it happen for you, automate all of that tedious context switching and actual manual work that you have to do. And then the third big thing around Smarty is providing you the right information at the right time. Smarty understands your data, your analytics, We're trying to give you recommendations based off what Smarty is noticing over time, and also giving you access to your data so that you can see how you're spending your time and optimize from there. And we're trying to do all of that in a clean, minimal interface like Notion with an N. But we are not just, we're not a notes management tool. Notion has its own value proposition. It also requires a lot of work to set up systems in Notion and manage it. The goal with Smarty is that you can use Notion with Smarty. We're hoping to add a Notion integration this year, actually. But the goal is that you don't actually have to actively manage and your productivity system. Smarty's the one handling all of the management part. All you have to do is ask Smarty.
Yeah, you're totally right. Like Notion is a blank canvas. A lot of my friends that I recommended Notion to, they really didn't know what to do with it. They were like staring at a blank page. There's a lot of learning curve for you to really master tools like Notion. But I want to talk to you about the business model of Smarty. In the SaaS world, right, there are different models. Your business model is about a 7-day trial and a subscription-based service with, I believe, $10, correct? So
yeah.
My question is that why haven't you opt, for example, for a freemium model where there's like a free version that everybody can use and get a taste of what does Smarty do? And then, there's a room for upgrade later on.
We actually started with a freemium model. We had a freemium model up until November of last year. And as I'm sure you're aware, there's been a huge climate shift within fundraising, within the startup and VC world. And so I had a lot of pressure on myself to figure out a monetization model that would work, that would allow us to grow towards profitability. And so that's actually why we switched to this $10 a month software SaaS subscription model. And really, our competitors that are out there right now, they're charging a much higher monthly subscription. But what we're trying to do with pricing today is really see what features are converting users from free to premium. It's almost like a test. We're trying to see what are the most valuable features that people are willing to pay for so that we can prioritize those features, really build on top of that. Because our ultimate goal as a business is to survive this kind of downturn in the VC ecosystem and find a way to get to profitability so that we can continue to provide this product for a long, long time. So that's really like the reasoning behind how we got to this premium model today. But we were freemium for a long time. And I'm hoping that one day, once we find our stride, we can continue to provide a free tier as a way to get users in and then allow them to have different upgrades from there.
Yesterday I spent time on one of your long videos on YouTube. It's kind of a vlogging video where it's all started with literally you working, like you're sharing your screen and you're doing work. And it was so interesting for me. And I kept watching in the background. And then at some point, you start saying like some really valuable nuggets of information. With this kind of videos and with your interaction on other social media, you're active on TikTok and LinkedIn and Twitter, or X now. It makes me wonder, like, how do you have time for all of this?
I am a solo founder, so it is just me. And it's actually, I'm so glad that you saw the video and you thought it was entertaining. So that video was actually me live streaming on Twitch. I sometimes, when I'm working late at night or working on a weekend, I will live stream on Twitch. I started live streaming on Twitch really with video games, which I think is how most people start live streaming on Twitch. But then I realized that a lot of folks do work with me channels, and I tried it one day and I actually really like it because when you're live streaming while you're working, there's almost this accountability as you're working because someone else is watching or someone else might be watching. And so it keeps you very on track. And then it's also fun because people tune in and out. And so they'll talk to me, they'll ask me questions, and I really do enjoy it. And so that was something that I did every once in a while last year, just as a way of staying motivated, especially when I'm working late at night or working on a weekend. It's a great way to like feel like I'm not alone as a solo founder. And so that's how that video came about. And that's why they're so long, and that's why there's such random talk tracks with it, because I'm just talking as I'm working and as I think of things. In terms of like creating content, so actually I'm very new to that. I actually wasn't creating content for the longest time for Smarty. And to all of the aspiring founders who are listening, you should be creating content all the time because it is such a great way to connect with your fellow ideal customer profile or with your fellow founders. It is it's probably the best way to get feedback because you're putting so much of yourself out there and so much of your product out there. And so that's actually a big priority for me in 2024. I want to be creating more content related to Smarty, related to my founder's journey, in hopes that I can draw in some of our target audience, but also draw in other founders who might be able to mentor me or who I might be able to mentor.
I also started heavily in 2023 content creation, and therefore this podcast is kind of the fruit of my labor. It took me a while to find a format that I'm comfortable with because I started with like me doing some presentations, but then it felt lonely, just me talking to the camera. I felt that I need this interaction, like I need to talk to people. Finding the right format and finding the discipline, a habit, a system that keeps you on track to deliver content consistently. When you start your content creation journey, you have to start counting in hundreds. It's very important for businesses to be out there and show their face and engage with the community.
I was gonna say I 100% agree, and I love that quote about how you need to be counting in hundreds, because I do feel that dejection when I don't get a lot of views. I'm just starting my content journey really consistently, and you're right. You have to have habits around it. You have to be consistent. You have to be counting in the hundreds and not be so demotivated when you don't immediately get views or you don't immediately get interaction. So I love that. I find that very motivating.
And I'm sure it's really harder for you because your resume is so big. Like, I feel sometimes, being a graduate of MIT and Harvard, worked in Microsoft, starting your own company, raising all of these funds, and then getting like 200 views on TikTok. How do you cope with that expectations of you from society?
I think, the funny thing is my reaction today is so different than it would have been 5 years ago. I think the best thing about being an entrepreneur and founder is that it gives you a very tough skin. You just know that you are willing to do anything to see what works, what sticks. You're always willing to learn and be curious. And when you have, I wouldn't say it's like a failure, but when you don't have the wins that you want or you don't meet the expectations you have for yourself, you don't tell yourself, oh, that you can't do it. Instead, the founder mindset is very much like, okay, try again, try something different, try something new, learn from someone else. It's always about solving the problem instead of wallowing in why it didn't work. And I feel like that is something that the founder's journey has really taught me, because I feel like right out of college, I think I would have been a lot more dejected at not immediately succeeding. And I think I did grow up in an environment where it's always like, okay, this is the next milestone you have to achieve. This is the next success you have to chase. And the fact is, with the founder journey, there's so many unknown unknowns. You're not sure what is going to work for you. And so you just have to try everything and you have to experiment. And so I think that's where I'm at this point with the content journey as well, because it took me so many learnings to get our product to the point that it is today. It took me so many rejections that I had to work through to get the funding that we have today. And so now I look at this go-to-market strategy, I look at the content strategy, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. I just need to figure out how it's going to work, what is going to work. And the only thing that I have control over is my own mindset and my own resilience. And so I think that's really what it comes down to. You have to just keep showing up. You have to manage your mindset and not wallow when things don't work out.
Absolutely. And content creation is very democratized. It's really all about consistency, delivering value, as well as being engaged in the community. And it's a very humbling experience. A lot of people try to portray an image of themselves that is not real. The future of content is what you're doing, like being real, being authentic. I'm choosing every day to be authentic, to be real. And I think people will recognize this more than really portraying something that's not real.
I agree. I think that's amazing. You should definitely talk about yourself as a solopreneur, because that is what you're doing. You're building this company from scratch. And I do believe that content creation today is very democratized. And I think that's a very beautiful thing, that anyone, anywhere can start talking about something that is valuable to them, that impacts their life, and hope that other people will find value in that too. And that authenticity definitely shows. I think people who aren't authentic on social media, it's obvious very fast, and that's why things aren't taking off. And so I do try to bring my own authenticity to everything that I'm doing online. I do find live streaming is a very raw version of authenticity because there's no control. It's just happening in real time. There's no script. But I feel like that is where all content creation is going today. It is becoming more and more improv. It's becoming more and more less makeup, less filters, like be yourself, talk about what you're doing, talk about what's not working, because people don't just want to hear all of the successes. They want to hear about what was hard, what was the journey, and they want to learn from you. And I want to share that. So I'm also like, this whole conversation is very much motivating me to get more serious about the content creation.
Speaking of sharing things that are interesting, you were at the center of generative AI. I want to know what was your first reaction to ChatGPT being launched, and if you have seen these models before ChatGPT.
Yes, actually. So Smarty was already using OpenAI's API before ChatGPT came out. We were already a customer of OpenAI. They were doing really great work around language parsing and large language models. And that is really a big core value proposition of Smarty. This idea that you can just ask Smarty what you need. You can ask Smarty for commands that you want to automate and workflows that you want to automate. And so we were already very much bought into that. And when ChatGPT came out, it was transformative because I think it has changed the mass public's view of what AI is capable of. And I know everyone is always asking, like, how is AI going to change the way you work? And the fact is, AI is just a tool. It is something that every company is going to be leveraging. Every professional is going to be leveraging. There's so many articles that are coming out today about how professionals with AI are going to be more powerful, more empowered, more able to do great work than professionals without AI. I don't think AI is going to be replacing any humans in terms of the core jobs that they're doing. It's really going to empower humans that are doing specific jobs to do them better. And so for everyone that's out there right now that's like very excited about these LLMs and ChatGPT and OpenAI and Midjourney, and they're not sure how to use these products, I would recommend start playing around with them, start immersing yourself in how they work. How can you use them? How are other people in your same position using those same tools? Because this is going to be prevalent in every company. While it might not be immediately adding value to your job right now or to your life, I think it's worth getting to know how it works and how you can potentially incorporate it into what you're doing in the future.
I love your optimism. So there's a lot of pessimism around AI too. There's an argument that says that AI is gonna be a major displacement of jobs. Um, it's just because of the same reason you mentioned. Like there's gonna be few individuals who can be super productive, and they wouldn't need a lot of other administrative employees. And then these administrative employees, especially those who haven't adapted, they're going to find themselves in a tough position. And I think recently, I don't know if you've heard, but there has been a lot of layoffs in the tech field. And I'm seeing on
There
LinkedIn a lot of people are really struggling to really find jobs again.
I think I am very optimistic when it comes to the time horizon being very long. I think in the long term, I'm very, very optimistic. In the short term, I do believe that we're going to go through a rough patch where people are going to need to train themselves on new skill set and transition to new roles and new job opportunities that are opening up because of AI and because AI is displacing some of these roles that people are doing manually today. I think in the long term, I have a very optimistic view about it. I think in the short term, there will be a lot of costs, a lot of human costs because of it. And we need to work on programs to train people on how to best use these tools for new jobs, for new opportunities that are definitely opening up. Because I do think AI is creating this new industry of roles and projects and jobs to be done. And so I think, of course, like I'm nervous about like the short-term future, but I'm also hopeful for the long term. And we'll see how that transition goes. In terms of the layoffs that are happening right now at tech companies, I think part of that is tied to how there was a lot of overhiring during the pandemic. And I think there was a lot of jobs that were hired for at that time that might not be as necessary right now or are oversaturated. I think there are also a lot of other factors here as well. Um, I can definitely say that I'm struggling with what I'm seeing with the VC and startup ecosystem. Funding has very much dried up. There's been a huge shift of focus from going from growth first and having as many users as possible to now being as profitable as fast as possible, as revenue driven as possible. And that is really a big part of the reason why we moved from freemium to premium model. And so there's definitely a pain that's being felt, I think, throughout the tech ecosystem today. But I'm still optimistic about the future. And I think a lot of that will hopefully thaw as the year continues. I have to hope for the best, but I am trying to prepare for the worst.
Let's talk about the startup, because you mentioned that. So let's say someone listening to us and they have a cool business idea, and they want to start a business. You could speak about it because you're a technical founder. But let's say someone is not a technical founder. So there's a chicken and egg scenario that I talked about before. Is that if you have an idea and you're not technical, you need an MVP to seek funding, but you need also capital to create an MVP sometimes, especially if you're not a technical founder. So what do you say about this dilemma, and how can people pass through it?
It's a really great question. And honestly, I feel like being a technical founder has almost hurt me in a lot of ways because I very much fell into the pitfall of build and they will come. I started building a product for myself and I spent a lot of time developing instead of validating the problem or validating the persona, validating how the product will actually work for a more generalizable user instead of just myself. And so I think knowing how to code and building something are very different things. There's so many great tools out there today. And that is part of this AI movement as well, with generative AI being able to like create code and create bots. And there's so many different ways of testing an idea today. And when you as an aspiring founder have an idea, the number one thing you need to be doing is validating that idea. And there's so many different ways of doing that with tools like Figma, where you can build prototypes and just mock-ups, and you can start doing user interviews and testing with just those mock-ups to figure out how the product will work. There are so many different types of no-code builders today, so many things that I wish I had done more of. I'd gotten this advice, but because I am a builder, I was like, oh, I don't need to do that. I can just build my prototype instead of testing a mock-up of a prototype. And I think that is a trap. I think you can create landing pages to test value propositions and ideas and see how much interest there is, how much demand there is before you even build a prototype. And so I think there is so much you can do as an aspiring founder with an idea to understand what is the main problem that you're trying to solve, who is the main person that you're trying to solve it for, and how are you going to create a revenue model around it. And then I think it's really important as a founder to ask yourself, is this a venture business or is this a lifestyle business? Because a venture business is really this business that is going to become a unicorn. It is going to have massive returns for the investor when they invest in your company. And I think there are a lot of expectations that come with a business that is a VC or venture business. But if you're just trying to create a business that is profitable, that will help you support your lifestyle, and you don't need it to become the next Google or Amazon, then it is almost better to bootstrap, maybe to find some angel investors, maybe to find just a few people who are invested in you and try to get your profitability and high revenue as fast as possible. So I think that's my viewpoint for like an aspiring founder. There's so much you can do, even if you don't know how to code, even if you don't know how to build. There's so much more that goes into the entrepreneurial journey. And for people who are excited about the generative AI space and wanting to build a startup in this space, what I've seen from generative AI startups that are really, really succeeding well today is that they are using generative AI to solve a very specific problem for a very specific industry vertical, for a very specific niche, and they're hitting high revenue as fast as possible. So I think that is the best advantage you have as a startup, is being fast and nimble and solving a very specific problem for a very specific person and becoming high revenue driven.
That's great advice. I'm curious though, how are you marketing Smarty? What's your marketing strategy?
That is a great question. So, like, I think tying back to this last question, some of the biggest mistakes that I've made as a founder that I really hope that other founders won't make and learn from me is, one, don't start building until you know exactly what you're building and who you're building it for and how it's going to work. That was definitely my biggest pitfall, was building it and hoping they will come. My second biggest, I think, pitfall was this idea of rushing into hiring the wrong person. Like your team really, really matters. It took me a long time to find the right team that was equally invested in our product, equally invested in our vision and what we're building, and bringing that same energy and passion. And I think it's really important to hire slow and really find the right team and fit for what you're building. And it's better to do it alone until you find that right fit. And then I think the third biggest thing is to validate your idea and start marketing as soon as possible. You don't need a product to start validating and marketing your product. You can create landing pages to drive demand. You can create wait lists. I'd heard that advice before. Honestly, I'd heard all of this advice before, but I almost felt like because I was a builder, I almost like let my own interests and my own passions take over what is very, very sound and good advice. And I really think for people out there today, like you can start validating your idea immediately with these landing pages, with websites, with mockups. And so leading into your most recent question about like, what are we doing for marketing? Like now we have a solid product, we have users, we have some revenue. And so we're trying to like figure out how to increase our top of funnel user acquisition. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think for everyone out there, there is a three-pronged approach. The first one is your owned media. It's all of the content that you are creating yourself. You might be spending money on resources to create that content, but you really have control over the cost there. And you're creating a lot of SEO articles for your website. You are creating content on these social media platforms, both as a founder as well as a company. So that's the first type of like, I think, marketing strategy. The second really big marketing strategy is paid advertising. And so again, you have to create content for that. You have to try to find these different platforms where your target audience lives. But paid advertising is very expensive. I recently received some advice around how you should be spending around $40 an ad per platform per day, which can add up very, very quickly. And so really, you don't want to start paid advertising until you know exactly who you're going after, what is working, and really have a very concrete strategy around that, usually at a 3-month cycle. The other type of paid advertising is working with micro influencers, creating those partnerships and collaborations, and finding people who will advocate for your product. This is obviously easier for when you have a tangible CPG sort of good, but you can still do this for software as well. And then I think the third type of advertising is earned media. So it's all the PR. So having people publish articles about you, going on to conferences and talking about your product. Some of this is very pay to play. If you pay for PR, you might get a certain amount of return. It's really hard to find, I think, organic PR. But I think that is the 3-pronged strategy that I think is really working for companies today. And that's what we're trying to do at Smarty as well.
I got to know Notion through YouTubers. I thought that these YouTubers are, they're doing Notion videos because they like the platform. But then I discovered recently that the very first people who start talking about Notion on YouTube were paid. Notion paid them to make these tutorials. Other people jump on the bandwagon and start creating Notion content. And it's a very interesting marketing tactic. Something that my cousin told me once. Okay, if you want to start a business, prepare to never have a life. Prepare to never have a weekend, never have a vacation, and all of that. Not only you are a founder, not only you are a technical founder, you're also producing the product. How did you navigate all of these challenges and opportunities?
I definitely think Smarty helps. I use Smarty to manage my schedule and my routine and my habits and making time for self-care and mindfulness and finding mental clarity. I think it's really important as a founder that you take care of yourself, because I totally agree with your cousin. I work a lot of hours. I spend a lot of time on my startup. I'm very privileged to have great family support, so I don't have to worry about, I don't know, I don't have any other pressures. Like everyone in my life, my friends, my family are very supportive of this journey and how much I'm sacrificing to make Smarty a reality. So I think I have a lot of luck and privilege in that sense, and I'm very grateful for that. I think I use my tool to like help me keep track of my habits and my accountability and finding space for self-care and mental clarity. I will say that the startup journey has been very hard on me physically and mentally. And it's really over just like the last year and a half that I've been really trying to prioritize my mental health. And now this year, I'm like everyone going into the new year, I'm trying to prioritize my physical health as well. I'm trying to make sure that I have a daily habit around being physically active, taking long walks, trying to align my mental clarity, I guess like mental clarity hobbies like taking walks with my physical goals as well. And so really trying to find that balance. And then I will say, like, at the end of the day, if you're really, really passionate about something, you're always going to be told you can't do this, or this idea like sucks, or you're not going to get the validation you need externally. It is really, really important that you internally validate your idea, your passion, your dreams for yourself, and then make note of the progress that you're making every day. Celebrate small wins. I think it's really, really important every time something good happens, even if it's very, very small, like it's just one new paying user, to celebrate that, because and write it down and then reflect on those wins every so often, because you will see how much progress you're making. I often tell myself, and I often tell my investors, oh, I wish I had been at this point a year ago, but I say that every year. Every year I say I wish I'd been at this point a year ago. And if I look back to where we were a year ago to now, I can tell that we've made so much progress. And since I started this journey, Smarty is in a completely different place. And so I think at the end of the day, you just have to keep going. You have to believe in yourself. You have to track the progress that you're making. And a startup is it's a long journey. Like, don't start a business idea just because you have an idea. I had a lot of ideas. I picked Smarty because this is something I could see myself working on for the rest of my life. Future of work, enterprise productivity, that was my bread and butter at Microsoft. This is a space that I'm very, very passionate about. If I wasn't working on Smarty, I would probably go to a competitor with the same vision as me and also just continue the same work for them. And so I really believe in the space. I really believe in our longer term vision. And I can see myself working on this for the rest of my life. And so that also keeps me going, because it is a sacrifice. Startups are a baby. It's dependent on you, and you need to put all of your energy into it.
Oh, absolutely. It needs to align with your purpose as well. In today's environment, people really needs to feel that they are contributing and there's meaning in what they do. And I think this meaning will keep you going, especially if you're involved in a startup that requires all that sacrifice. In terms of timeline, when do you think that we will be in a position where we wake up every day and we open our, maybe we don't even need a laptop and screen. We just tell our AI, what do I have today? And then the AI will say, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. Do you approve? And then the AI would basically do our work. Do you think this is coming soon?
I do. Yeah. I think this is like a 5-10 year timeline. I think there's so many people working on different versions of this. Obviously, there's a software component and there's a hardware component. So I don't know if you saw, but Meta recently came out with Ray-Ban Wayfarers, where they have the Meta OS pretty much built into these sunglasses, or even clear glasses, prescription glasses that you can wear and you can hear and talk. And like process things through the Meta lens pretty much. And so obviously there's the software part, there's the hardware part. And I do think that we're going to have software digital extensions of ourselves very, very soon. And I hope that Smarty is part of that new industry that is coming.
But philosophically, it's a dilemma of having to coexist with entities made out of silicon that are 10 times more capable than us. So what would be our purpose if AI could do a lot more than we can?
I think, people have this like very specific perspective. It's either AI or us. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be AIs with humans. I think you've seen this already on the chess space. AI might be better than humans, but humans with AI are better than AI and by itself. And so I do think we're going to have this almost symbiotic relationship with artificial intelligence in the future, where we are using it as a tool, and the intelligence of AI is very different than human intelligence. I don't think AI will be fully able to replicate exactly where we are with human intelligence. We're all going to have our own unique perspective, our own unique type of intelligence as humans. And I think the real powerful future is the combination of us working together, every human with their own artificially intelligent version of themselves. I think that combination to me seems like a very optimistic future.
Denzil Eden, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.